So you think that where Taylor Swift sits at an NFL game is of no political or social significance to you? Well, rich black TikTok would beg to differ. Why did we have a whole civil rights movement about where we could sit and who could sit where and why? And why have powerful black people made it their job to understand where the rich white girls are sitting? Some background context. Mrs. Mahomes here in the middle is the wife of the NFL player Patrick Mahomes. You probably already know that. That's Taylor Swift. That's someone I don't know. In this picture, we have a household worth of over $1 billion. Taylor Swift started dating Travis Kelce, who is on Patrick's team, the Chiefs, back in 2023. And since then, Brittany has had the social pleasure, the political pleasure of being photographed as one of Taylor's friends. There's hand-holding, laughing. Taylor has lent her star power, her general goodwill in the country to the embattled Brittany. Why is Brittany embattled? Because she has had a rocky transition, or one could say an inelegant transition to NFL wife stardom. She's young, she's recently incredibly wealthy, and has not always shown up in public, treated other service people, or just appeared to look like she found her footing as someone with this much wealth and political power now. So it was a really big boost for her to be one of Taylor's besties and be seen hand-holding, hugging, smiling, schmoozing, all of that. And then a little while ago, Brittany liked and then unliked a President Trump post or other posts involving support of the former President Trump. People found out, she got blasted, she blasted back, she couldn't believe people were being haters, and something interesting happened. So unfortunately, the already embattled Brittany, who was just getting this bump, now finds herself being outed as something of a Trump supporter, and it doesn't look good. People, for reasons like racism, sexism, former President Trump's rap sheet, his behavior towards people, his general dislike of democracy and peaceful transfer of power and protecting his own vice president from political violence, that's an issue for people. Taylor Swift is a business, not just a person, but as a person and as a business and as a brand, she has only a couple times openly endorsed any politician, right? And she has been known to throw her hat in the ring for support of people who have been really attacked by President Trump's party and his policies. She has done so in very careful, again, I say very measured ways. One of the accusations that stalks Miss Swift is that she doesn't do enough, that she doesn't lend her microphone more forcefully to causes that really matter. And you know she's aware of that. Her PR team's aware of that. Tree's aware of that. So if she is to continue showing full, close buddy-buddiness with this woman, that's not going to be good for her brand. It's not going to be good for her, and it's not going to be good for whatever political message she does decide to say, because then it's going to look tepid and wishy-washy, and she's also going to look like she plays to both sides. So when the Chiefs kicked off this NFL season this weekend, there were many people who were looking very closely to see which private box would she be in, and would she, per usual, be close, basically up on top of Brittany Mahomes. Guess what? She wasn't. Brittany was in another box. Nothing was said, but everything was said. Now, ahead of this, something that any PR publicist will tell you is that when sources close say something, it's usually people from inside the camp that have signed off on whatever's about to be said. And there was a couple of pieces run about how these two women just were not going to bring up politics, and they were going to basically agree to disagree, and they're all grown-ups. Off camera, not photographed, Brittany was, right after all this, burst up onto the scene, but before the NFL, at Taylor Swift's home with a bunch of other people, including her boyfriend Travis. It is one thing to privately put up with somebody that you might not agree with politically behind your own closed doors, of which are many in a mansion like that. But it is another thing in person, in public, in front of everybody, to be seen with that person. Being in a private box together would require Taylor to make several other tactical choices with cameras on her for the entire evening. How she held Brittany, if she touched her, if she looked at her, if she ignored her, whatever. For both sides of this, these two women, it would just be better if they were not in the same box. And they were not. Come the day when the NFL kicked off, they were in separate boxes. That was way too long a background. Now we're going to get into the meat of why this matters. For centuries, across America, Europe, wherever, who your kids went to school with, who you dined with, who you hung out with. All of those kind of things were tightly controlled according to class and power and race, because class and race were stories that people told about regular old human beings who were all human, who they stratified into categories like white, black, mixed, whatever, to consolidate power, to consolidate money, resources, all those kind of things. It's why it's a big deal when a boarding school like mine, which is supposed to cost over $100,000 a year in tuition, but was subsidized by two very wealthy people, why when they decided to let the school open to women, and why when they started to allow people, youth from every quarter, to gather, why it was such a problem for people, because they wanted all the resources of that school, all those internships and connections and talking. They wanted all of that to go to rich white boys. Why do you think people are scramming so hard to get their kids into Ivy League colleges, or for women to play golf so they can hang out with male investors, or people going into certain supper clubs? Because who you know matters, not only because of what they can give you, but what you can convince them to do. Mahomes has a ton of money. They have a foundation. Their support for Donald Trump or anybody matters. It could actually get him elected. Brittany Mahomes is actually the perfect modern young new face and a stamp of approval for millions of people, because she can make racism, sexism, and anti-democracy look aspirational. Why do you think Donald Trump was willing to rave about her on Truth Social or wherever it was? Because someone like her, who was normal, and then the American dream worked, and then she was insanely wealthy, and now everything's fine, and she loves this country, and anybody who has anything bad to say against it should leave. That plays really well into a very particular political agenda. And she, with her black husband and their black kids, can normalize a way of thinking that has otherwise, or should have otherwise, just died away with a bunch of old people from the civil rights era. What's so dangerous about the articles that have come out about how the two of them are just, they're going to put things aside and not talk politics. It's a very privileged, and I dare say, white way of getting to live in America. Because what this means is these two people can vote differently, give money to candidates differently, and nothing about their lives changes as white women, as wealthy white women. But guess who else it changes for? Basically everyone else. There's something I find very dangerous about the idea that mature adults can all just get along if they have entirely different politics. Now, what I'm not saying is, of course you can be nonviolent. Of course, I know this because I've lived this out in my own life. You can even be on speaking friendly terms with people whose politics make you want to throw up. But what you can't do is pretend that your values and the dreams and the hopes that you have for your neighbors are compatible in any way. We've been socialized to think that decisions made by wealthy people or politically powerful people are rational, but they're not. They're largely emotional. They're largely influenced by their network. They're largely influenced by their own financial gain. There's more to say on this, but let's connect it back to Rich Black TikTok. There's this realization that happens when you clock that somebody who's cool with you, down with you, thinks you should have rights, that kind of person, also is totally buddy-buddy and okay with someone who thinks the opposite. And then what you realize is that you are not accepted and respected because of you and your full humanity, but because of the power and the money that you have. And that these people, the people you are surrounded with, the people who you have worked so hard to be in the same room as, have no problem selling you out, or are not, even if they have a problem with selling you out, they might not realize they've done it till it's too late, because they tend to have a higher tolerance for other people's nonsense than you can afford to, because it might actually cost you your body and your life. These are people that are not critical about how their policies and their power and their friends and their ideas and the legal system that all their family's connected to can harm you. We're all just people at the end of the day, but some of us are given more political power or innocence or understanding or care because of our skin color. Being fully aware of the alliances that people with more power will make with each other, or the ways they will tolerate each other, is an act of self-protection. And against that much money, the only thing the rest of us have to say anything about it is social pressure, calling it out, saying what's going on here. Oh gosh, I ran out of time. We'll get back to this.